Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Marina Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Theresa Lear Levine. Teresa and I are going to be talking on the topic healing trauma and PTSD with EFT tapping. Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you so much for having me, Myrna. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm going to enjoy talking to you regarding EFT. I know it's a great modality, and as you know, as you say in your bio, that it's one of the most effective ones for dealing with trauma. So, awesome conversation. All right, guys. So let me give you a short bio on Teresa. Theresa Lear Levine is the founder of Becoming More Me, where she helps professional women to get out of their own way and resolve their innermost pains, traumas, and challenges so they can fully enjoy their success in present moments. She does this by scientifically proven methods that help them to release what's currently holding them back and leverage their perceived weaknesses into superpowers. By utilizing Teresa's unique approach to the emotional freedom technique, her clients have overcome nervousness and difficult situations, such as preparing for big presentations, overcoming their fear of flying, and transitioning through divorce. Teresa's personal struggles with past traumas, high function and anxiety, and ADHD kept her in an ego-driven holding pattern of dissatisfaction and stress for longer than she likes to admit. Teresa is the host of the Becoming More Me podcast and lives near Washington, D.C. with her husband, Jeff, their 4 boys, as well as their 2 yellow labs. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. Well, Teresa, let's dive right in. I'm always interested in a backstory. So, how did you transform personal struggles with past traumas, high function and anxiety, and ADHD to become an EFT master practitioner and health coach? Very
Well,
interested in that story.
absolutely. And I wish I could say I figured it all out overnight and, you know, I'm here today, but it was a long and winding road. And, our journey to be the best that we can, the best version of ourselves is never ending, right?
Mhm.
So for me, it was I always had ADHD. There's no doubt about that. I didn't get diagnosed until my early 40s,
You're
and
kidding.
that kind of brought
Wow.
a new bag along with it of things to figure out. But it was always apparent. And then, life brings about trauma for all of us. And I think a lot of us can get into a pattern of comparing our traumas and thinking that, oh, well, what I have isn't that bad compared to, or it's worse compared to. And for me, it was a lot of that, like, oh, well, it's not that bad. So I kind of shoved a lot of things down and aside, thinking, whatever. And it builds up over time. And as I got into my 20s and entered my first marriage, and that ended in divorce after we had our first child. And there was so much that needed to be worked through. And I just kind of had this habit of plugging through and pushing through and trying to make things work. And probably around that time that I had met my husband, Jeff, who I'm married to now, and realized I really needed to start working on some things in order for the outcomes to be different. But at that time, I was doing the best that I knew how. I think we always are. We don't always give ourselves credit for that. And we had 3 more kids together, and as my hands we're not, and I had, 2 kids and then 3, I only have 2 hands, so more kids than hands, and it starts to get a little bit crazier, and I think that's when my ADHD really started to be more of a struggle for me. I couldn't juggle as well, there was more to keep up with, and after I had my 3rd child, I started doing more, like I started a business from home, doing more of the coaching and things that I had been used to, focused mainly then on like nutrition, fitness, that kind of stuff. And very quickly, as I was evolving in consciousness, I was realizing that I really wanted something deeper. As much personal development as I did, I consider myself a personal development junkie. I always felt like I was learning and understanding things, but not being able to apply them to my life and make them work. So, and when you know and you understand something and yet you don't feel like it's possible to take the aligned action, it's like resisting your own expansion. and the pain that you feel multiplies. And the things that were once kind of uncomfortable or kind of painful are really glaring because of the knowledge that you have. So for me, it was trying to figure out, well, how do I get in action to do these things? Why am I so immobilized? What's preventing me from taking the next step? And thank goodness that's when I learned more about nervous system regulation in conjunction with, energy psychology and modern psychology, and really was able to start getting out of my own way, locating the places where my own energy was blocked, and not comparing myself so much. I EFT has been around for decades, and I had seen it used with Olympic athletes. I had seen it used with war veterans. I had seen it used with people who had worse trauma than me, And it was that comparison again, where I was like, oh, I don't need this modality. This isn't what I need. I was, a mom of 3 or 4 kids at the time, and I just wanted to sleep through the night, not be stressed, feel more connected in my marriage, lose a few pounds, it seemed like basic things, but they were all adding up too. And I didn't realize that it was that same modality that helped war veterans or Olympic athletes that could help me too. And as
Mhm.
soon as I opened up to that and realized the universal effectiveness and the scientific backing behind it and started using it, it was like that wall that was in front of me that was immobilizing me. I was able to just cut right through it instead of trying to go around it or climb over it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. When you said that took a long journey, yeah, your journey took you all the way into your 40s in order to, but yeah, being diagnosed with ADHD in your 40s, wow, that's interesting. I guess you didn't go for a diagnosis until you had your children and recognized that, that you couldn't really concentrate or juggle or whatever. So that's amazing. Now, the people that are listening are probably wondering, what is this EFT? What does it mean? So can we like expand on that? What exactly is EFT tapping, and why does EFT have greater efficacy and speed than other healing modalities, especially for trauma?
Absolutely. So EFT is a psychological acupressure, you could say. It combines ancient Chinese wisdom using our meridians. Our meridians are what our life force flows through in our body. And we use these different points along them combined with modern day psychology. And by tapping our fingertips on these meridian endpoints, the same points that if you were to go and have acupuncture done or a deep tissue massage, they would be inserting needles or pressing really hard. All we need to do is light fingertip pressure on some of these different points while we're focusing on the negative thing or the challenge and giving it a voice. And it allows the energy blockage, which an energy blockage is the source of any dis-ease we have in our body. It allows those things to break free so that we transform the way that we feel about things. And what's really cool about EFT is that whether it is something emotional or physical, it's effective on both, as well as whether it's something that happened a really long time ago, something that's happening in your life right now, or something that you're worried or anxious about that hasn't and may never happen in your life.
Hmm, interesting.
And yeah, so it can be that really opens up the door because you can apply it then to pretty much anything and everything. And
Mhm.
I always find that when I'm working with people who are skeptical at first, the best thing to apply it to is something tangible, something physical, that headache or a backache or something where you're really going to notice a difference in and a shift immediately versus other things that it's equally effective on, like money blocks or limiting beliefs or fears or things like that, where you might not be presented with something that allows you to know that the change has been made immediately. And you can't necessarily see that you're making progress until a little, further down the line. But it works obviously without any needles like acupuncture. We're just tapping, but you can you can get right to the amygdala, that little walnut shaped part of your brain that's in charge of fight or flight when you're doing this. So instead of like with talk therapy, where you're more in the frontal lobes of the brain working, this cuts right to the chase, to that fight or flight impulse that we all have. And it calms that along with your emotions and allows it, you to really access a new feeling about things, and allows things to transform very naturally. And it also addresses the negative, which I think a lot of people choose to overlook these days. Everybody just wants to feel better, be positive. The toxic positivity is kind of crazy. And we can't genuinely feel better and feel positively until we address the negative underlying things that are going on. And then once we do, it's kind of like tilling a field to plant seeds. You now have this fertile soil where what you want to
Mhm,
plant can actually grow versus getting
mhm.
overtaken by the weeds or the negative emotions, so to speak, that are
Okay.
still there. So it really helps for that. And when you're thinking about it in the way of trauma, like you said, it's
Mhm.
very much the same, because if we have a past trauma, something that we've been through, and we're simply just trying to feel better without addressing it, then it's probably going to still be running in our subconscious mind in one way or another. So this really allows us to clear it down to that subconscious level, and to do so very gently. A lot of people, if they've been through something really difficult or really traumatic in their past, it's hard to talk about it. And some forms of therapy can be traumatic themselves.
Mhm.
So EFT is incredibly gentle. It's amazing how much progress that you can get without even, having to go into great detail or tell the entire story or anything else. You can really start to shift things and feel differently, and also to feel more comfortable about sharing more of it than you would without the nervous system regulation in conjunction with the talk therapy part that's going on. So, yeah, it's you know, it also works on a genetic level, like with epigenetic discoveries and things that are happening. The way that our genes express can be affected by this type of work with EFT tapping. So that's really fascinating too. There's a lot of studies going on about that right now. But things that we thought were once unchangeable, like our genetics, we're able to see how much power we have over changing even that. Very empowering.
Yeah, yeah, that's Dr. Joe Dispenza's, that's his
Yeah.
yeah, his studies. Now, um I have interviewed some guests on the show that talk about EFT tapping as one of the things they use in their therapy in order, just like you said, in order to move trauma along, maybe move it out of the body. Because sometimes they're saying that the issues in your tissues, I guess is one of my
Yep.
one of the name of my episodes, issues in your tissues. So that you can hold, the trauma in your tissues. Now, the the part where you just mentioned regarding the meridian points being almost the same as when you have acupuncture. I've never had acupuncture, but I've seen where they have the needles and things like that. But I don't think I've ever seen needles in the head. And I was asked to do some tapping um, a few weeks back, or let's say a month ago, because I was going through this process where I needed to have um, make sure that the stress in my life was at the lowest point. And the coach said to me, when you get up in the morning, read some scripture, meditate, and then he said that I don't remember him saying to touch with my fingers, but I thought he meant that I should tap it with the back of my hands,
Mhm.
tap above my breastbone, and then
Mhm.
tap certain points of my head. So can we talk about where normally the people tap and maybe specific places that does certain things? Is there such a thing?
Absolutely. So before EFT tapping came to be known the way that it is, with the points that I'm going to share in a minute,
Mhm.
there was a predecessor to it, where there was a lot of different meridian endpoints that would get put into these formulas for people. So let's say that you were afraid of flying and you went to get one of these formulas created. They would, tell you to tap a certain amount of times at a certain place and this and that. And it would be really specific for you. It was also ridiculously expensive. And this is like in the 80s. We're still talking like, it was like five figures to get one of
Wow.
these formulas made back then. But
Okay.
when Gary Craig, who's known as the founder of EFT, learned all of this and figured out that we really only needed a certain number of points to create this energetic overhaul, he made this accessible to everybody. So the main points that we're using in EFT are the side of our hand, which is known as the karate chop point, and then we use the top of the head, we use the eyebrow, like right where the hair on the eyebrow starts near the nose, we use the side of the eye, we use under the eye, under the nose, under the mouth, the collarbone, which is the exact area you just talked about. It's not actually the bone. It's kind of that mid chest point that's sometimes called the sore spot. That's a great place. And then under the arm, right about there. And if you hit all of those spots while kind of doing the other things that are important to understand as a practitioner that I walk my clients through, it's an energetic overhaul. So if you were to focus on that one thing that's bothering you and you're hitting all of those spots while voicing it in the right way and everything else, then you're going to clear the energy around the issue because you've used all of those different spots. That's
Okay.
not to say that you can't clear it with just one. Like that collarbone point is one of my favorites, the one that you mentioned. A lot of times when I'm just sitting here talking with people, I'll just tap my collarbone. Or when I'm doing initially meeting with clients, a lot of times they start to share more emotional things and they'll start to get choked up and I'll just say, hey, let's just tap our collarbones while we're talking, and they automatically can get a much deeper breath. They can gain a little bit more control of what's going on for them emotionally, and they can continue the conversation without it re-traumatizing themselves. It's also a great tip if you're somebody who tends to, spend time on the phone, or maybe you call your family and you find yourself complaining about something or talking about something that's bothering you. Tap while you're doing it, and then maybe you won't find yourself having to talk about it again and again and again, which is what tends to happen to people with talk therapy. Feels good, kind of like after you have that conversation with a family member or something, and you're like, oh, it felt so good to get that off my chest, but you didn't actually resolve the root of the problem or get the energy moved around it. So you find yourself talking to the next person about the same thing because you still need that same relief and release, and you haven't yet gotten it for yourself. You haven't allowed the emotion to come up and out, which is what emotions want to do. They want
Okay.
you to give them a voice, recognize them, acknowledge them, and let them move. And so often, like I did for years, we just go, just going to push you down a little bit and hope you stay there. And that just contributes to so much dis-ease and pain, and just we don't need to do that. We can release our emotions without it being difficult, and I think that's so many of us have been taught to not be angry or not show our feelings, or to suppress things, and it's really not what's necessary in order for us to grow into being the best version of ourselves.
So that's amazing. So, so when you're doing the therapy, you're combining, like I just mentioned, where you're talking about it, you're like tapping, one or two of the points, or maybe all of them.
Mm.
And while you're talking about energy and getting it through your body, is it similar to the energy that's held in our chakra systems, or this is more an emotional energy thought?
Yes and yes, both. I love if you're familiar with the chakra system, we can talk about
Yes.
that, because even
Mhm.
when my clients have no idea what an energy portal or the chakra system is, I
Right.
still am using that behind the scenes in my own understanding of what's going on with them. And for those that
Okay.
want to geek out on it with me, I'm always sharing little tidbits. But our chakra system is beautifully engineered. People think it's this like woo-woo thing, but if I just use an example of bringing an idea into physical reality, and how so many of us either fail to do so or create something that is not what we originally set out to do, that's
Mhm.
all about our energy. So let's say that you have this idea, maybe it's a new business or a new podcast or something, and it's this awesome idea up in your seventh chakra. It's this airy, expansive, awesome idea, and it feels good up there. And then you start to bring it down. Maybe, you tell your spouse about it or your best friend or something, and it starts to kind of get legs. And, it's like, oh, what do I need to do next if I'm actually going to make that happen? Then you have to give a voice to it. It's moving down the chakra system. And at each of these places, there's an opportunity for it to be really held and nurtured, or for it to get kind of on the dark side of the chakra and have something go a little bit differently. And that's what we have to pay
Mhm.
attention to. A lot of times I notice when I talk to clients at first that they literally have trouble getting words out, or they literally can't talk about something and give it a voice because their throat chakra is so
It's
blocked
blocked,
from
right? Mhm.
something usually in their past that has given them the idea that they are not allowed to have the voice that they want, or that they can't do something, or so on and so forth. Or if you drop it down a little further into the heart chakra, everybody knows the whole phrase, well, her heart wasn't in it, just didn't happen, you know? And that
Yeah,
energy can get
yeah,
blocked there too. But
yeah.
the ones that I always see, I have yet to meet a person, myself included, that does not have issues in their most lower chakras. So the root and the sacral and the solar plexus, that is where, the root chakra is the beginning of our nervous system. It's our earliest memories and our feelings of safety or lack thereof. Most people struggle with feeling completely safe in this world, in their body, in their life, whatever the case may be. And when that's not fortified and strong, we don't have the proper container to bring that airy fairy wonderful vision that was seventh chakra down into physical reality. And it will either not happen, or maybe it manifests as not at all what you wanted it to be. You wanted that new business or that new podcast to be fun and expansive and full of possibility. And instead, you've manifested hard work, struggle, strife, not
Mhm.
feeling successful, not feeling enough, all these other things. And it all
Okay.
has to do with the energetic container that you have created in your energy system and your chakras. So I
Yeah.
am always looking at least at those lower chakras to see what happened when a client's, nervous system formed, their earliest years, the things that, their inner child has been through, or their inner teen, or their inner young adult, their inner anybody up until this present moment, pretty much is what we need to look at.
I like that
Any of those
one.
inner beings that are, us in the not present moment, that are affecting our present moment, they need to be taken care of so that we can call our power back. That's the only reason we're not showing up the way that we really want to right now, is because we are leaking power to the past or to the future in the form of worry and anxiety, when the only place that power is worth anything is right here.
In the present moment.
So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
like you mentioned in your bio, present moments. Yes. Okay. All right. So it's the same. The energy systems are all bundled up as far as the meridian and the chakras, and in order to heal, you have to kind of release them. I like that. I love that, where you brought an idea down from the seventh chakra, where it's all possibilities, and you brought it down to the first chakra, which is right, walking in it, and bringing it into physical. I love that. People are always going the other way, so I'm glad that you went this way, which is I love that. So that's great. Now, you mentioned a couple of times the nervous system regulation. So what is EFT doing as far as your nervous system and regulating the nervous system? Um, uh, is it connected at all to the vagus nerve, or what are we doing with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to first understand the nervous system itself a little bit,
Mhm.
because that's not always understood. And it's so important to be able to regulate our nervous system in conjunction with anxiety, burnout, just general sensitivity to things, stress, and trauma. So, helping you to understand what it means to have a regulated nervous system and how to go about it is pretty important. So, with the nervous system itself, we have the autonomic nervous system, and that is the unconscious control center of the body. And it consists of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems, which are interconnected. They help to maintain the stability, the balance between with our psychological and our physiological states. Then we have the sympathetic nervous system, and that responds to our stress. That's kind of what I was talking about, the fight or flight before, and being able to get right to the amygdala. That's what's going to respond to all the things that seem urgent. Sometimes they really are urgent. Sometimes in today's world, things that once were urgent, they're not. We get a lot of stuff that triggers our sympathetic nervous system these days that really shouldn't be triggering it, but that's another story. And then we have, after all the commotion that you go through with the sympathetic nervous system, we have the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's what aids us with recovery. So that's activated when we do relaxing activities, maybe some breath work or some yoga, some meditation. And that's going to help with our actually physical repair, tissue repair, the issues in the tissues, digestion, and our immune system. So regulation at its core is the ability to move flexibly between those different states and to respond to the stressors and recover from them in a more, fluid way. A stressful situation, we want to be able to adapt to that so that we're not overwhelmed and so that we can completely recover after the stress is removed. And a lot of people find themselves going into these spikes of stress and then never actually getting through recovery. And that can be so damaging to our system. So this ability to be flexible and adapt to circumstances gives us a sense of agency. And EFT tapping allows us to do that. So, when our nervous system is chronically dysregulated, then our bodies develop various symptoms and conditions. So, it can be pain, it can be discomfort, fear, all different things can develop. And trauma and burnout and sickness and chronic pain are all things that stem from an overwhelmed or a dysregulated nervous system. So EFT is my favorite nervous system regulation tool because it does help to get our body, our mind, our spirit all back into alignment so that we are truly regulated.
So that's amazing. So I go back to what I was talking about when this coach told me to, in order to make sure that I am de-stressed, that I should do, a couple of those tapping. I don't remember if the above the eyebrows. I'm actually thinking that might have been one of the points, but I do remember the collarbone and I remember the head. So let's just say the scenario where I was stressed, not any past trauma, but just stressed. Maybe I've got an event coming up. You mentioned something in that, someone will have a big presentation or their fear of flying, a big one. So,
Is that a big one for you personally?
I'm not afraid of flying,
okay.
but I know that that's one of the biggest fears, around. But let's say that, I'm going on a flight and I'm really nervous. So what I think you're saying is if I do some kind of tapping, whether it's on my collarbone or my head or my brow or under my arm or any of those places, sooner or later that energy of fear is going to be released and it's going to take me from the fight or flight response, which is, I always get them mixed up. I think that is the sympathetic nervous system, and it's going to take me back into to my parasympathetic, which is relax. And is that how this works?
You're a fast student, Myrna. You're a fast student. You're catching it all. I'll give you an example that I think will really help. And that is that I love to say that EFT can be used like a Band-Aid, and it can also be used for that like deeper wound clean out when you want true healing. So in the case of fear of flying, let's say that you'd never done EFT tapping before and you're getting ready to get on a plane. It's not like you have time to meet with me a few times and actually like get to the root of it and figure it out. But you do have time to do some of the Band-Aid style tapping where you could feel a heck of a lot better on that flight and feel a lot more relaxed with some stuff that just addresses the in the moment feelings that are happening, the negative energy, and so on and so forth. But let's say, you're on your first leg of the trip and you've still got to fly back, you probably are going to need to do the exact same thing when you fly back, because we didn't get to the root of the problem. We just calmed things temporarily for you.
Right.
But
Okay.
that's beautiful and valuable. It's kind of like when people go to see a psychiatrist or something to work on things, and they get prescribed a medicine so that they can relax enough to actually be able to do the work. With
Mhm.
EFT, it is the equivalent of the medicine that allows you to relax enough to do the work. And it's the thing that does the deeper work too. So when we use it as more of that deep wound clean out, that's like when you're meeting with me or doing, more intensive EFT rounds yourself, if you're capable of doing that, and you're getting to the root. Why is it that you're actually afraid of
For the
flying?
fun.
Is it
Okay.
something that happened on a flight previously? Is it just an ingrained fear of death? What is it? And, somebody like me is there to pull that out and figure out, be the detective for you so that it doesn't take very long, and get to the root of the problem so that we can relieve that from your subconscious mind. We can rewire things. And then you still might need a little bit of that Band-Aid stuff when you go on a flight, but probably not. And you'll know when it's not
Right.
coming back over and over again that you've gotten to the root. And once you
Yes.
get to the root with EFT, you don't need to work on it again. It's not coming back.
Really? That's amazing. But when you're doing the Band-Aid, they might have to do it on the flight back, because I was saying, or a
Yeah,
couple times.
yeah. But that's okay. If that makes the experience better for
Yeah.
you. And I
Hey,
mean, we're only talking about 5 or 10 minutes of your time to do a little tapping to calm yourself down. That is 100% worth it for most
better.
people.
Right. Yeah. Than sitting there biting your nails. And yeah, you're right. You touched on one of the major ones. Fear of flying is it usually is fear of death. But yeah, I have an aunt that says, I'm fear of flying because you never survive. And every little turbulence, she thinks the plane is gonna, yeah, but yeah, and that's a big one,
Yeah.
my
It's
last
interesting that you
interview,
mentioned biting your nails too, because there's meridian endpoints on the sides of all of our
right, because
fingers.
you talk
And that's
about, yeah,
exactly the reason why it's so attractive to people to like nibble
to
those
bite their
areas,
nails.
because it's relaxing. It gives you the same kind of thing. We actually use those endpoints in a lot of my client sessions where we're tapping on the sides of fingers and things, and you can get that same sort of relief without biting your nails, and releasing things through those endpoints.
Yeah, that's really good. Awesome. All right, so we talked about EFT tapping for trauma. We talked about it for a Band-Aid, but you also say that success-minded women, in particular, need to have it in their toolbox. So, are you talking now about EFT in the workplace?
Well,
How does that help there?
I think that success-minded women can get in their way a lot, and EFT is an amazing tool for peeling back layers. Everyone's way of getting in their way can be different, but some women have visibility blocks. They don't want to be seen or actually succeed in the way they think they do, and they're blocking it. Or there could be fear of success. There could be fear of failure. There could be, I work with a lot of women who are crushing it and doing a great job out there, and they've got upper limit issues that they need to break through,
Right.
or
Okay.
worthiness issues that are underlying, not being paid and compensated the way that they should be, and things like that. Our emotions are underneath all the things. So when success is at the heart of what you really want and desire for your life, you have to think about all the things that are propelling it and all the things that are preventing it.
Mhm.
And EFT has been a great tool for me for leveling up, because every time I see myself getting in my own way, I can get out of my own way and I can release that blockage and show up differently. That's probably the thing that resonated with me the most when I first started doing it. Is I noticed myself showing up to situations, whether it was parenting or running my business or in my marriage. I was showing up differently than I did the last time in a similar situation. And that can feel a little bit strange. That's another thing to work through, because here's the thing: our nervous system wants to keep us safe and
Yeah.
familiar. It knows what it
Yeah.
knows, it likes what it knows. It doesn't like all this new stuff that we think we want for
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
want to double our income, or we want to have a new relationship, or whatever. It's like, no, we don't know that. So we're
Right.
going to stay right here. And it God love it. It's trying to help us. It's trying to keep us safe, but our brain and our nervous system do not care if we're happy. They don't care if we're fulfilled. They
Yeah.
just want to keep us
Right.
alive. And there's
Right.
a lot of ways that we can be alive that are no fun at all.
Yeah.
So it's there can be an element of reparenting, there can be an element of releasing that inner saboteur and all of the the protection that we no longer
Mhm.
need, and really stepping into that next version of us that nervous system regulation and modern psychology and all the other modalities I whiz together can really help people to get through much faster than
Yeah.
doing it on your own.
Yeah. Well, I have a curious question here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have a curious mind. So, so we're talking about known traumas, and we're talking about known fears. But if you're getting in your way, you don't understand your limits, you don't understand why it is that you're never successful because you're always there's a saboteur in your background.
Mhm.
How do you get that out of them with does EFT somehow release that so they're aware of it? Or how did they get there?
Subconsciously, we all know exactly what's going on. And
Like,
that can be a matter of developing our self-trust and our intuition, which are also amazing things to work on with this. When
okay,
somebody comes to me and says, "Well, I just don't know why I'm this way," I do.
right.
I'm also a hypnotic communicator, and I
Mm,
I bring that into the mix too. But at the heart of it, we do know, but there's plenty of things that we can use EFT for, such as like repressed traumas or things where we've literally forgotten or we don't know. We know something
mm,
happened or what have you, but it's not apparent to us, and we know
right.
that it's affecting our nervous system and the energy of feeling unsafe in our body, and that can
Mhm,
be worked on too. We don't necessarily need to know what happened to us in our
okay,
lives in order to change the way that we feel here in the present moment, because
right.
that moment is no longer happening anyway. We're
Okay,
here, we're grown, we're adults, and we can change the way that we feel in this moment. But
that's good.
yeah, at the heart of it, we know what's going on. And sometimes it's just a matter of increasing intuition, self-trust,
Yeah. Well,
and
I'm glad I
peeling
asked the
the
question
layers.
because that's good because you're right. Um, we know that 95% of people are just they're not conscious. Things are just happening around them. It's only like 5% of the population is actually conscious of what's going on with them. So as coaches, a lot of time people come into our conversation and they don't know. So I just wanted to know how we address it if you don't know. But you're right. If you're working just in the present moment and you know that something is wrong, and yeah, you might think you know why you're this way, but you're not sure. So I like that. I like that. So whatever is there, you start bringing it up, and as you bring it up, maybe it opens up like a flower, and then you actually get to the root of it, right?
I love that visual. And EFT is my favorite tool for increasing consciousness too. I mean, we don't know what we don't know until we know it.
Right,
And
right. Mhm.
it's the whole peeling a layer back. And I laugh because I was talking to my community last week and I was like, why do we use this onion analogy, peeling layers of an onion? Emotions are like that, but I
Yeah.
don't know what's at the center of the onion that we're all trying to get to. So, anyway, emotions are kind of like the layers of an onion. I'm going to have to find a better vegetable or another
Okay, well,
analogy.
no, onion is perfect. I don't think there's any other.
But I
Yeah,
just feel like
onion,
there
flour,
should be something
eggs,
amazing at the center, other than I guess there's a
eggs,
sprout. I
flour.
don't know.
Right, right, right,
Um,
right. Well,
yeah,
the flower
so
at least has some pollen in the middle and that kind of stuff. But yeah, peeling it back like a lotus. Yeah.
yeah, so
So
we peel back the layers, but every layer that you peel off of something, your consciousness expands.
yes.
So
Yes.
I always feel like, to me, the analogy, like when I do just a round of tapping, just 10 minutes, which by the way, can lower your cortisol up to 43% in just 10 minutes. And that's
Wow.
not just, I mean, that happens everywhere throughout your body. It doesn't matter if what you're addressing is anxiety about a presentation that you have to give or fear
Mm,
of flying, your stress is lowering about everything. So you're showing up differently to everything. But it's kind of like if you were to get, front row tickets to a concert, and it's a band that you love and you're seeing them and you love being there in the live environment, but in the front row it's very limited. You can't see the whole picture. You have kind of like this up close sort of
Mhm,
thing. And then
mhm.
when I do EFT tapping, it's almost like I'm like rising out of the
The limited,
orchestra pit
right,
area into
limited
like the
view,
nosebleed
right?
seats,
Mhm, mhm.
which I can see everything from up there. You
Yeah.
know, yeah, it might be the cheap seats, but it's got
Great
the most
analogy. All right.
valuable view of the whole situation.
Yes,
And
yes.
in doing that, I also feel more peaceful, more protected. I don't have people bumping into me and everything else. So I feel safer and I feel just better all around. So it's just kind of like rising right up as I do that. And it doesn't take a very long time. And then your perspective shifts about whatever it is that you were tapping on so immensely that you can look at it differently, you can perceive it differently, and then again, show up to that next instance where you're encountering it again differently.
Yeah. Yeah, well, listen, you convinced me that that is one of the best methods for releasing and growing and becoming conscious. So no wonder it's just taken off. So, all right, so this is the point now where you tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you. I think you have some video gifts that you want to,
Hmm.
share with the audience of how they can try this. I
Yeah.
definitely want to be, you said something there, lowering cortisol. Wow, I love that.
Yeah, definite benefit. And
Yes,
I love it as a
yes.
practitioner because it has another feature called borrowed benefits, which means that as you're tapping on something, like I'll have a lot of people, especially this time of year, that come to me and maybe they have a head cold or something, but we're going to be like working on their marriage or something in our session. And they tell me about the head cold at the beginning. And even though we're working on their marriage and focusing on that throughout the session, at the end, their head's clear. So
Yes,
you
I love
borrow
it.
benefits from yourself, and then as a practitioner, I get to borrow benefits just helping my clients work on themselves because I'm tapping along with them and I'm feeling better too. So it's
Yeah,
lovely that at the end of a day of working with clients, I'm just as energized as I was at the beginning of the day because it's not
yes.
depleting, it's not burning me out, it's replenishing me just as it does the people that I work with. So
And
you asked where people could
oh,
find me.
yes.
And I do want to give them a video gift because this technique, it's one thing to hear us talking about it, Myrna, but it's another thing to do it and to actually feel that difference for yourself and to get that relief. So if your listeners go to theprivatesessions.com, you can get an ebook that is full of tapping sessions that I've recorded with dozens of other podcast hosts on all sorts of different topics. I'm sure you can find something there that speaks to you that you can press play and do along with us. And, Myrna and I might even do a little tapping and add it in there too. We'll see if our schedules align. And
Hey,
you can also find me on my website, teresalearlevine.com, which has links there to my podcast, Becoming More Me, ways that you can get in touch, and all the other things that you might have questions about. So thank you.
this was actually very beautiful. I love it. So on your website, there's links to your podcast. Your podcast is called Becoming More Me. If you guys didn't get that, the website is teresalearlevine.com. And for the videos, it's theprivatesessions.com. Now,
Yeah.
a transcript of my conversation with Teresa will be on the show page, and I'm going to link out to these tools for you. Now, the other thing, Teresa, what are your social media handles? Are you in social media?
Yeah, I am. It's just my name. If you're on Instagram, Theresa Lear Levine, same with Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, all those places. Just look up my name and you'll find me.
Beautiful. All right, so that's awesome. Well, listen, this was a fantastic conversation. I love when I share, things that help us improve our lives, which is really what the name of the show is: transform your mind to transform your life. So yes, this is a great resource. Do you offer coaching? You offer coaching. You didn't mention
Oh
it.
yeah. Oh yeah. I do one-on-one work is my specialty because I really, really love getting, nitty-gritty with people and what's really going on with them and helping them root it out and show up differently in their lives, feel better, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, whatever it is they're going through, looking for next level success. I absolutely love helping professional women to become the best version of themselves.
Yes, all right, and that will be on your website as well to find they can
Absolutely.
find that information. Okay, beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes, this was amazing information. I haven't even been tapping and I feel energized.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank
Just
you so
talking
much for
about
having
it.
me, Myrna. It was fabulous to speak with you and to have this conversation. And thank you for everything that you do to create these amazing episodes. I really enjoyed listening to some of them as I've prepared to be here with you today.
Okay, well, it's awesome. Well, thank you, Teresa. I appreciate that. To me, this is like life school. I love showing up here, learning things, expanding my horizons. And one of the beautiful things is like almost because I'm in the world, almost every guest that I have on here, I've tried some of the things, and for all things, I tried the tapping. So I'm going to continue doing that. So I will definitely go and check out the videos. And then, yeah, we can get together and record one where you're showing me how to do it properly.
I would love to do that.
Amazing. All right, guys. Well, listen, thank you for tuning in to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio podcast and television show. I love bringing you quality guests like Teresa. Definitely go check out her videos, her website. If you've got past trauma, if you have a fear of something, if you are trying to figure out why it is that you're not getting to the next level, this is a resource for you. So definitely check that out. And, there's also free resources, check out our podcast. I'm pretty sure you'll learn a few things there that will help you in your journey. So thank you. Thank you, Teresa, for being on the show. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. Thank you for the things that I learned on here. And I will continue to go, do my little tapping as well. Maybe I can even do it to maybe sleep better. Because when you talk
Uh-huh.
about lowering the cortisol, that's what that does.
You're on to something, Myrna. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. All right, guys. Well, listen, thanks for tuning in. If you're listening to this on iTunes, we'd love for you to rate and review. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to subscribe. And until next time, namaste.